Hi there! You can probably tell from the excitement on my face and the thrill in my voice that I'm very giddy today, because I'm going to start a new army for Warhammer the Old World. What you are going to witness in this video is the fulfillment of a decade-old dream. You see, the miniatures that I would call the newest Wood Elf miniatures were actually released back in 2014. And when, well, 10 years younger me saw those Eternal Guard models and Wild Riders, I immediately fell in love. I mean, look at the army book cover. Or the Durthu model. I mean, how can you not fall in love with the new army concept they were going for back in 2014? But the issue was, back then I was an unsupervised young guy without a lot of money. So I didn't get the models and the army right away. Because I thought, well, I still got time. And then in 2015, Warhammer Fantasy was cancelled. So you could say the Wood Elf army is the one that got away. Until now. Because nowadays I'm an unsupervised adult, still without a lot of money, but rich in experience. And this time around I'm not waiting for it to get cancelled again before I buy the whole thing. At least that's the reasoning I try to convince my wallet with. Anyway, even with the release of the Wood Elves a little bit in the future, I of course was able to get my hands on a few models in the Age of Sigmar range, and some that are not Wood Elves at all, because I'm going to kitbash them. And speaking of kitbashing, I want to tell you a little bit about the vision that I have for my Wood Elves. And from now on it would be easier for me to call them Ice Elves, because, well, that's the sort of vibe I want to go for. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry, I'm excited. I swear this happened for the first time. I am going for a melee-focused Wood Elf army. Why? Because I like it. So the only ranged units in my army will be the Glade Guard tax that I will have to pay in core. So here is an army list that I scrambled together to give you a slight overview where I'm heading here. Some mages for characters, a handful of dryads, the Eternal Guard, of course, the Glade Guard tags, treekins, war dancers, a chunky amount of wild riders, and some treemen. In addition to that, I want some wildwood rangers, one or two melee characters, a few more war dancers to switch it out, and maybe an eagle or two. And all that put me in a bit of a pickle. You see, contrary to popular belief, I'm a weirdo. First of all, I don't like metal miniatures. And yeah, you can scream at me all you want, but I usually win my matches, so I don't have to chuck them at my opponent's head. And the other issue that I have is I don't like to mix and match models that are from different centuries. Like if you compare the Eternal Guard versus the models for the War Dancers. And it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to like the War Dancer models. Just putting them next to each other, it always looks out of place. And as someone who loves to create a very immersive army that is themed, that's just not an option. So I have to kitbash quite a bit, which sounds like a hassle, but it's not for me. I flipping love kitbashing. So far I've gotten myself some dryads and 2 treemen that I already started building because I was so excited and couldn't wait. 2 boxes of Kurnoth hunters as treekins, 20 dark elf witches, which will be kitbashed into war dancers and glade guards. And to do that I've gotten some used wild rider bits. I was especially interested in the heads of the Sisters of Thorn, and I might also be able to use those bodies of the Sisters of Thorn to create some mounted heroes. And speaking of heroes, I bought this box impulsively. I have no clue for what they are, but they are sort of dark elves. And of course the one in the middle can be kitbashed into a cool wood elf mage, and the one on the right into a war dance hero. This should give me plenty to do while I'm waiting for the battalion box and another box of wild riders. So to sum it up, so far I'm going for a mostly melee focused, heavily kitbashed wood elf army. But kitbashing and coherent miniatures isn't my only pet peeve. I also love to build my armies around a certain theme and vibe. I do see individual units as micro dioramas and a whole army as a bigger diorama that is coming together to tell a certain story. This often leads to the fact that I limit myself in the variety of units that I'm going to field, because in my mind it wouldn't make sense in that particular theme, which in my mind makes playing all the more fun and immersive. And I really love to indulge myself in the creative side of the hobby just as well as in the gamey side of the hobby. And I've always been enthralled with the idea of having an ice themed army. And I think the general aesthetic of the wood elves are just so fitting for this idea. Except for, well, the tree part. But hear me out, ice cold raging. Natural spirits fighting alongside their elfin counterparts. Filled with hatred, vengeance. Stalking their prey with ice in their veins. So I want you to immediately get the theme when you look at the army. Which means I'm not going to only incorporate it in the base design, but also the miniatures themselves. And I've been experimenting with ice and cold themes on miniatures for a while now. So I can show you a few projects of mine as some sort of concept art. Here's one of those, a diorama I built called the Ice Wendigo. Here I tried to incorporate a icy looking resin with a normal painted miniature. And I want to recreate the same effect that you can see here on the antlers on my wood elves. Just imagine the tree men, for example, wielding antlers like this. Or some heroes having a weapon replaced and fielding an ice sword. So just some key features of the miniatures replaced with these icy materials, while everything else is traditionally painted. And here's another example showcasing the vibe I want to go for when it comes to the bases. This dark volcanic wasteland, interrupted by icy veins, pillars and spikes, just breaking through the stone, like the dragon here. But enough concept talk. Let's prove it. At the start of each army project, when I'm done working out all these little concepts in my head, I tend to paint 2 miniatures to see if the concept that I'm going for is actually translating to real life. And I also want to get a feel for if the base design actually accommodates the paint job. Because sometimes you think in your head it's going to look cool and then something clashes and it doesn't look good in the end. So after priming those 2 dryads, I gave them a quick grey zenithal highlight. And then I dry brushed them white to add additional accents and highlights. I then mixed 2 paints together to create a more pastel looking turquoise, which is going to be the main eye-catching color of my army. A lot of shields and cloth and comparable things will be painted this way. In this instance, this little leafy loincloth here. And of course the contrast paint immediately creates midtones, highlights and shadows thanks to the work that we put down earlier. I then painted the bark of the dryad, once with a dark brownish tone and the other one with a dark grayish tone. My gut feeling was telling me the grayish dark tone is going to be better than the brown one, but I wanted to try it out still to see if I'm correct. This would also become the second main color I'm going to use on the cloth of the elven models. Then I went in and shaded the turquoise part a little bit more. And here we are, concept models done. And I'm sticking with the dark gray instead of the dark brownish gray. It accentuates the turquoise more. Also, I like the properties of the paint more. The darkish brown hides the highlights too much. I think the loincloth came out better though on the brown one. But that's due to how the miniature is posed and how the center highlight interacts with it. But all in all, I'm very happy with the outcome. Which leads us to the bases. First, I primed one base white. And the reason for that is simple. I am going to place this little piece of glacier on the base. And my gut feeling told me again that it would look cooler on a white base, but I wanted to try both options anyway. You know, just to be safe. I glued the ice pieces to their respective bases. I then used my favorite texture paint to paint the sand of the bases. This time around though, this is where disaster struck. You see, this badge is quite old and also I almost depleted it. So I unfortunately noticed too late that there is only very tiny sand particles left. So in the end it didn't dry out as coarse as it would usually do, which unfortunately also then impacted the paint job. But nevertheless, I soldiered on and painted everything with a black oil wash, which is the same technique that I used on those slates you've seen in the Dragon diorama earlier. When it was dry, I had to wipe the excess off with a sponge. In the meantime, I figured I want to improve my icy spirits a little bit. You see, they all have these little intricate tribal symbols in their bark. And I just wanted to bring them out a little bit more. So I first highlighted them with a white oil wash. And then I airbrushed a glowy ice cold color over it to create a little OSL effect. It did come out a little bit too strong though for my taste. I might consider doing it next time with my airbrush that has a smaller nozzle. And it's just a proof of concept after all. And now all that's left to do is showing you the final result. The first painted miniature of my new Wood Elf army. I am really happy how it came out. I had this concept in my head for over a decade, and now I can finally hold the first steps towards a full army in my own hands after all this time. And yeah, of course, I made a few mistakes here and there. Some things didn't work out as I intended them to, like the sand texture that I used. Would it look better if it came out as coarse as it should be, like here in this example? Well, yeah, of course, but it's still showing me that my gut feeling was right. And I can continue with this theme and vibe and create my dream army that I always wanted. I usually avoid call to actions, but this army project is not going to be a single video, it's going to be a whole series. So if you're interested in army painting content and kit bashing and maybe a little bit of 3D printing on the side, then consider subscribing and hitting the bell button. Because new videos for this project are going to be released over the upcoming weeks, and I'm happy and excited to share the progress with you. And if you're even more inclined in helping me out, consider leaving a like. And also, I wanted to remind that every comment actually helps, even if it's just nonsense. So if you don't know what to comment, why don't you just comment, and what about the blue eggs? Thank you for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next one.